It's been almost 2 months since Elden Ring's initial release, and the game continues to make waves in the online gaming community. This is in no small part due to its dedicated fanbase. This week, one fan took to the game to decimate foes with nothing but his keister. Tune in for that and more in today's news update. Completing Elden Ring with your butt. Elden Ring is the culmination of everything From Software has learned from its previous Soulsborne games, with an open-world twist, of course. That isn't lost on fans that have already beaten the game dozens of times over. But what do you do after beating the game's foes time and time again, pushing the limit of how fast the game can be beaten, and min-maxing your character into a god? Well, you beat the game with your butt cheeks, obviously. A new challenge. From Software's player base has always pushed the envelope of what's possible in their games, and Elden Ring has been no different. Players have been shaving minutes upon minutes of game completion time, getting the current record to just under 7 minutes. But that isn't enough. There's always more to do, more challenges to discover and create, and more nonsense to perfect. One Elden Ring streamer, Distortion2, sought a different kind of challenge. His goal was to absolutely shame every boss in the game with the crudest of attacks, the butt slam. From Software may or may not have intended for the attack to be the pinnacle of slapstick humor, but Distortion2 certainly made it that. The attack is part of the Ash of War ground slam, which can be added to any melee weapon in the game, changing the attack on the weapon to the ground slam while also adding heavy affinity to the weapon. Heavy affinity increases strength scaling for the weapon in question, which means that the higher your strength, the more damage your weapon will do. Elden Ring has a ton of items, weapons, armor, and stats that can synergize to produce absolutely broken builds that will make you a nightmare to everything that you cross paths with. It just so happens that a hop into the air and a crash with your butt can become a viable soul attack, and an absolutely terrifying one at that, if you just find the right tools. Distortion2 is clearly well acquainted with the combat of Soulsborne games, almost every dodge and attack being perfect, but that isn't enough. You've got to have a pretty good understanding of the other mechanics of the game. Every item can be customized in one way or the other to maximize the kind of damage your character is built around, and the streamer knew exactly what to use to make his butt the worst thing to grace the lands between. There were fumbles here and there, but ultimately the tush of the Tarnished succeeded in becoming Elden Lord. The legend of Let Me Solo Her. In other Elden Ring related news, this past week another player has, by online consensus, been inducted into the series Hall of Fame. That player's name? Let Me Solo Her. Of course, that may not be the player's actual nickname in the community, but having adopted that moniker as the name of the character that has made history, it definitely is how he'll be known from now on. Every From Software game has its legends, the players that go beyond what the game asks of them and makes a name for themselves in the community for the outrageous feats that they accomplish, just like Distortion2. And now Elden Ring has another, one of the first legendary personalities, the naked man with a pot on his head, the dual-wielding katana master Let Me Solo Her. The name itself is an affirmation of skill, a statement of purpose, one that's meant to reassure other players that everything is going to be okay, because the pot-headed slayer will take care of it. In a game where there's a limited means of communication, having a name like that gets the message across as well as anything can. But I think some context is needed here. The fight. Elden Ring has a ton of bosses, 83 to be precise, but few challenge players like the Goddess of Rot, the Blade of Makia, Malenia. She has strong, holy magic and lightning damage absorption with madness and deathblight immunity. Let Me Solo Her, the legend himself claimed in DMs to gaming news platform Polygon that he fell victim to her blade hundreds of times before finally defeating her. Having run the gauntlet himself, he knew exactly what new players would have to go through in order to finish the game, and he felt like he was in the best position to help them get through it. The great thing about Soulsborne games is their particular brand of multiplayer gameplay. Players can invade others' games without any indication to those players that you may be stalking them. On the flip side, those that might be having a tough time with a certain boss or area of the game can opt to summon other players or non-player characters that can aid them in fights. Let Me Solo Her chose to be one of those summons, waiting for anyone that might need a helping hand to call upon him to deliver his dual-wielded justice, and boy does he deliver. At first glance, you might scoff at the idea that this nude, katana-wielding Tarnished man could possibly take on the intimidating Malenia, but watching him in action will slowly change your opinion. Videos on Reddit showcase the legend absolutely decimating the boss, while players actually benefiting from the fight stand on the sidelines, taking in the amazing display of skill. Let Me Solo Her dodges every one of her fluid and unrelenting spinning attacks effortlessly, so certain of his skill that he just walks up to her to goad them. In one instance, he was able to kill her in under 10 minutes without a single other player stepping in to help. He's now helped players pass the fight dozens of times. Ridiculous. The legend's praise. His fame was slow to begin at first, but in just 3 days, his third summon Han Solo Millennia video on YouTube has garnered over 1.4 million views and a ton of praise from the Elden Ring community. In fact, threads related to Let Me Solo Her are now some of the top most upvoted on the Elden Ring subreddit, which has been running since 2019 and has about 1.2 million subscribers. The character has been immortalized in hundreds of memes at this point and even has a 3D printed model that has been doing the rounds, with his signature pot helm and dual katanas. Let Me Solo Her is a prime example of how wholesome the Soulsborne community and the video gaming community as a whole can be. You will not soon be forgotten. New York Times Elden Ring controversy. In our final piece of Elden Ring content, we have to talk about the recent buzz surrounding the New York Times terrible article regarding the game. It's no secret that Soulsborne games are particularly tough when it comes to combat, and that's where the appeal lies. The reason why the fanbase is so dedicated is because they feel a genuine sense of achievement after overcoming the obstacles presented in the game. That's what a lot of news pieces and reviews tend to focus on, which isn't unwarranted. But there's a reason why NYT's most recent article on the game is getting flack. A strange comparison. The article tries desperately to draw parallels between the game and the current pandemic at every turn, claiming that the constant punishment that the game delivers is similar to what people have had to go through during the lockdowns with social isolation. Now, it's not the best metaphor, but it still doesn't warrant the backlash it's getting. One of the main problems is that the author of the article seemed determined to conflate every single experience they had in the game with the ongoing pandemic, which seems nonsensical. The other problem that most people are taking issue with is the author's belief that the game is only popular because of its contextual link to the pandemic. The belief is that because people have been in some way trained to deal with adversity through their experience in the past 2 years, and that the game provides satisfaction primarily because of the catharsis it offers to people that have no agency in dealing with the pandemic. It sounds ridiculous, and as if someone who wanted to write on one topic was instead forced to write on another that they had no interest in. The article itself shows very little knowledge of what the game is actually about, stating that it has something to do with a ring, while clips showcasing the game seem to be recorded with a tripod showing the television the game was displayed on. The problem isn't that it's a bad, poorly researched, poorly articulated piece, it's that it speaks to gaming journalism as a whole in its current state. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think that the New York Times deserves the backlash it's getting? Or do you think it's just the internet getting worked up over nothing? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.